All right, live pictures of the No Labels Town Hall, West Virginia, and Democratic Senator Joe Manchin speaking with former Utah governor and one-time presidential candidate Jon Huntsman. They would play the spoilers as the third-party candidates conceivably in a 2024 presidential run. Back with the panel, Asa Hutchinson on a couple of minutes ago. You know, I had the feeling, Bill, as I listened to him, that Asa Hutchinson is a decent man from a interesting state. Arkansas has always punched way above its weight. And I don't know, in 2004 or 2008 or 2012, it would have been an interesting message, but just not where the Republican Party is right now.
No, the Republican electorate is not with Asa Hutchinson right now.
And I think his style, or just sort of a generic.
I mean, the greatest indication of that is that he raised $500,000 last quarter. And so, you know, how do you continue on with such a shoestring budget? Now, obviously, he's doing the best he can, trying to raise his profile. But at the end of the day, the Republican primary voter right now, after 2.5 years of Joe Biden, I think are more with Trump or a DeSantis right now than they are looking for kind of a moderate candidate to get along with everybody. They feel like we need to take things.
Well, to that point, though, and we talked about this as it related to no labels, just third way, no labels. God. It happened to me last week.
That's a good one, third labels. That's a good one, third labels.
Okay. No. Put that right down there. That's going on the Christmas tape. But anyway, no, there's no radicalism in the center. You know, he sort of has the same kind of view of the no labels view of the world of like, yes, everybody should get along and everything should be great. And there's not even radicalism within the centricism.
But what he highlighted was the real division in the Republican Party. And my family has long been members of the Republican Party. Some are still with Trump, and many are not. And that is a real division. What I just could not understand is the path through Iowa. Because when you're trying to dethrone a queen like we were with Hillary Clinton or the, mantle, you have to have like some momentum right now.
You gotta,
going into the Iowa State Fair, we had so much momentum. And he couldn't run a state race in California now on the amount of money.
What's the reason for running?
Or
besides just being
the connection,
right?
the energy.
You're referring to the 2008 campaign with Barack Obama.
Yes.
It wasn't necessarily as much the message as it was the person, right?
Yes.
Politics has become about the person, not necessarily about the platform. That was the 1960s. They want their campaigns back. But I think about the Republican presidential race. The person was supposed to be, for many Republicans, Ron DeSantis. He was going to be this young, charismatic figure with a young, attractive family, on and on and on, who was going to galvanize the Republican Party around him and against Donald Trump, and so far nothing.
I don't see the nail in the coffin for DeSantis yet. I know there's been much ado made about everything that's going wrong in DeSantis' world, and of course there are many policy stances of his that are far more right than I would feel comfortable with. Look, I feel bad to see these polling numbers and to hear of the cash on hand for Asa Hutchinson, because conventional wisdom would lead us to believe is that his candidacy would strike some kind of, strike many a fancy, because he's a Southern gentleman. Yeah, but he's speaking moderately. And with Asa Hutchinson, what you see is what you get. And he's been doing this for years. He's the same person that was appearing on MSNBC and any liberal outlet saying the same message for years. Yeah. What I see is the problem. He's not sensational enough. He's not a man for the hour.
But there's a broader problem with the GOP and Asa Hutchinson, as well as the former governor of Maryland. The irony of all of this is that they could get in this race to run for president. They could never get the nomination. But if they had the nomination, they could easily draw more independents and Democrats than Trump and DeSantis, and yet they'll never get there.
I want to get back to the George Will comment, and then we're going to bring you in. Political prophecy is optional folly. But there are not enough Republicans in Iowa or the nation enamored of the snarling contest between Trump and DeSantis, their competition to see who can despise the most American defects to nominate either of them. And I guess, Bill, what I would ask out of this is how much of this is all about policy, which I get talking about, and how much of it is just about personality? People have seen Ron DeSantis. He's been advertised well. Okay, Jeff Rowe has a $100+ million war chest to introduce him, and people don't like him. I don't know how you fix that.
Yeah, but, with respect to Ron DeSantis, I'm old enough to remember the John McCain campaign, where he completely cratered the summer before the election year and rose like a phoenix when he basically rented a car and drove around New Hampshire. With respect to, what we're talking about with these candidates, Republican primary voters want a fighter.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what they are looking for. They're not worried about style. They're not worried about substance. Are you going to stand up to the mainstream media? Are you going to stand
You said they're
up?
not worried about style. Being a fighter is style.
But it is. And, you know, the style and the policy are two sides of the same coin for the Republican primary voter. And even when you talk to, you know, more moderate social voters, pro-business and pro-balanced budget, they still want the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, they know. They still want to
And
feel
that's
like
what they
somebody's
want.
willing to fight. Because they feel it. They
Because they
feel
don't want them to cower.
Hey, guys,
But there's one fire.
We got to run. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.